Okay, Gemini CLI is here, and this is Google's version of Claude Code. But the best part is that this terminal-based AI agent is open source. And you can start experimenting with this for absolutely free without any cost. And this is powered by the best Gemini model with 1 million context window. We are actually seeing this new trend where more and more companies are starting to release terminal-based AI agents. Gemini CLI has a lot of features, including access to a number of different tools, plus MCPs, which makes it very powerful. As a free user, you get 60 requests per minute or 1000 requests per day, which is really generous. But if you need more, you can bring your own API key. Now, since this is open source, you can potentially use this with other models, although we'll have to see how good the underlying agent is with other models. I had early access to Gemini CLI for a couple of weeks now, and it's pretty impressive. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to set it up, what are the different features that are available, and then we're going to try to create a web app and see how far we can push this. Okay, so in order to access it, you can run this command. You will probably need to remove the early access part because I think the stable version is going to be just the Gemini CLI. Now, once you load this, you have quite a few options to set it up. You can use your Google account, so you can log in with Google, or you can use the Gemini API key. It also supports login with Google Work and Vertex AI API key. I am going to use my own Gemini API key, or you can just create a .env file, put your Gemini API key, and it's going to be able to load from there. Let's set up the Gemini API key, and we're going to come back. So for that, I think I need to quit it. So I'm going to set my Gemini API key. Now I'm using a paid version. On the free version, at least during the early access, I'm hitting the rate limits. So it may or may not work with a free API key, but we're going to see that at the release. So I already set my API key. Let's run this again and let's see what happens. This time it's not asking me for API key, so it means it found that. Now you can create a gemini.md file where you can keep your instructions to Gemini. It's very similar to cursor rules. You can just ask Gemini CLI to help you with different things that you need. So there are a whole bunch of commands, ./help, /clear, /theme, but the few ones that I'm interested in is /tools. So Gemini CLI has access to a number of different tools. So here are the tools by default. So it can read folder contents, write to files, search text. Also it has web fetch and Google search. So you can provide URLs and it will be able to access those. So which is pretty neat. And you can also add your own custom tools as well. Now, one of the really interesting feature is that they have support for MCP servers. At the moment, since this is a new session, so it doesn't have any MCP servers configured, but you can configure MCP servers and you can ask Gemini CLI to interact with that. Another very helpful command is /stats. We're going to look at this later in the video, but this gives you an information of how many tokens it has used so far. And it's really helpful because it can be expensive. By default, it uses the Gemini 2.5 Pro. And also, just like Claude Code, it shows you the context that is left. Now, very similar to Claude Code, it also has the compress command. So it compresses or summarizes the context so far, which is really helpful. Let me type /help again. Yeah, you can also add things to memory, remove things from memory, right? So some really neat stuff in here. And I'm going to show you some of these features throughout the video. Now, one more command that I think is going to be highly effective is /editor. So you can select code editor, and this is helpful because you can directly see the diffs that are being added to different files. So if you're changing a file, you can actually see them in a code editor. In fact, I'm running this inside Windsurf, so we're going to just select that. So right now, I think if it creates files, we will be able to open those files and look at them. Okay, so here's the prompt that we're going to be using. We wanted to create a text to image a web app, we're going to provide a text description. It's going to use the external API to generate images. In this case, I want to use the Gemini Flash native image generation capabilities. So here is the link to the documentation, because I believe it doesn't have that knowledge. Now I specifically asked it to make sure to use your web's fetch tool to access the documentation from the provided link. Let's see if it will be able to do that or not. And the Gemini API key is in the .env file. Okay, let's run this. Let's see what happens. Oh, okay. So I ran into this issue. It seems like I'm currently using my free API key, so let's change that. So if you're using free API key from AI Studio, you might run into this issue because the agent is making a lot of calls to the API endpoint. Okay, so now I think it works. So this is basically using the web fetch tool. Sometimes if you provide links and you don't specifically ask it to use web tool, it doesn't pick it. So we're going to just allow it always. That's going to be like in agentic mode. That means it's going to run this command or run this tool next time if it needs to use web access. Okay, so I think it ran into some issues. Now it's trying Google search. This is probably going to end up with Imagine 4 or Imagine 3 instead of the Gemini Flash, but let's see. Okay, so it's going to use a Node.js server for the backend. For front end, it's going to use simple HTML. We're going to say just do whatever you want. So here, it's setting up the project for us. Now you can allow execution of specific type of command, so I'm going to just allow that. All right, let's see. Okay, and here we can actually see that it's creating all those files. So initially I think it was using Gemini Pro Vision, but it ran into issues, and then it automatically updated this to Gemini 2.0 Flash generative image generation model. This is the model exactly we want, right? So you can see the agent is able to look at the terminal, look at the issues that it's encountering, and interestingly enough, it's able to fix those. It says I was unable to find the process ID, so I think it needs to make sure to kill the process on a specific port. Let's allow it again. Doing more stuff. Check the Gemini API key. Now I have to check the file connection, the initial bug. Doing more review. That is bad. So it started running into the loop. And this is something that I have actually noticed with the Gemini model. So it says the server is now running, and it basically shows the same thing again and again. Let's say if the server is running, can we access it? It's indeed running, but does it work? And it failed to generate the image. Let's see what happened. So it's multimodal in nature. So what we can do is we can just take a screenshot of this. I'm going to just bring the file here. And the way I think you access a file is by providing the file path. I think it was this. I'm going to just tell it I am running into this issue. Now it's adding some logs. Let's see, it's going to try to run the server again. I think it did see some issues. Let's just run this again. Again, I guess it's running into that loop. I think the issue is with the payload that it's sending, but let's see if it can fix this. It actually, I think, figured out that it's supposed to use the image modalities as well, according to the documentation, but I think you can enable text and image both. But let's run this, and I might have to tell it to use text as well. So now it says it's running. We're going to try one more time. Oh, same issue. Okay, so I actually had to provide the payload information again as an example from the documentation, and now it was able to correct everything, right? And this time when you run it, it actually works. So let me show you an example. Here was the prompt, and it did create an image of a llama with sunglasses. Let's see, create an image of a tiger. Okay, so I think it will be able to do it, right? But the main issue is that the web fetch tool was ignoring, I guess, some of the payloads from the documentation, which is very interesting. Now, let's actually look at how many tokens did we use. Oh, wow. Okay, so for back and forth, we used about 700,000 tokens. And that's with cache tokens, right? So the input tokens were about 200,000 tokens. Output tokens in total were around 8,000 tokens. So not that bad. But the good thing is we cached about 75% of the tokens, which is pretty good. Now, let's say if it was a long running conversation, so I would usually use the /compress command. That way it's going to summarize everything that it has done so far, and that will help us preserve some of the tokens. So it says chat history compressed from 35,000 tokens to 550 tokens. Let's say if we run the stats command again, it shows us the same tokens, but I think in the next one it's probably going to reduce this. So let's say, can you add a download button? Okay, so it's adding that functionality. Okay, so here's our web app again. I'm going to select one of the images. It's taking its sweet time. Now we have the download button, and it seems to be working. Okay, so here's the downloaded image. So this was a quick introduction to Gemini CLI. It's a pretty amazing tool, but I would say it's still rough around the edges. There are quite a few things that Google, I think, is improving. But if you like Gemini models, I think it's a pretty good alternative to Claude CLI. Let me know if you will be interested in a direct comparison between Claude CLI and Gemini CLI. And also, how do you find it compared to other CLI-based code tools or even coding editors in your own experience? Please do share that in the comment section below. I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.